Hi, I'm Kat.
I'm Arden 13.
Welcome to our show, World Tiger.
Building Dragon.
Today we are continuing with some of World Anvil's summer camp prompts.
Summer Camp is a program set up by the World Anvil team to promote world building as well as the community in general.
There'll be a total of 33 prompts all throughout the month of July, so if you're looking to win some prizes for your submissions, don't miss out.
World Anvil is a free in-browser tool that has everything that a world builder, a GM, or maybe even a writer may ever need.
They also have some really incredible subscription options, so make sure to check those out as well.
Totally worth it and affordable. If you're interested, please consider checking them out. But in the meantime, I say we get to the prompt. Kat, what is our prompt?
Today we get to write about a part of our world that has diverse or bizarre flora and fauna. This was made for me. I'm so excited. This is made for Theatrum.
I really think that a lot of these, the 10 most recent prompts were just made for you.
I kind of feel that as well. You've got the Wives' Tale, you've got, the Natural Disaster, and then this one I am just
pumped about.
Pumped. I'm so excited.
Okay. Well, I am also excited.
Well, I'm excited for you.
Because I think I have a pretty good idea.
Cool.
But in any case, for all of you at home who may be unsure of what Kat and I are doing, we have given ourselves some parameters to complete this summer camp project. Each of us has 30 minutes to answer the prompt.
Each of our submissions have to be at minimum 300 words.
After our 300 words and our 30 minutes are up, we will come back together and share what we came up with.
Some of our best ideas come from collaborations.
That they have. You ready?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Time skip!
And we're back.
We are back.
I'm not gonna stop you. I'm letting you go first.
Okay.
We're not wasting any more
So,
time.
I went with the Blighted Plains of Theatrum, and this is another one of those where if you go back to our conditions video where we talked about creating a condition in our world, I got to talk briefly about the Blighted Plains because this is where the condition Blighted would come from. So, I got to write about this very bizarre part of Theatrum. In essence, about a century ago, parts of Theatrum started to harden and go completely dry, completely barren. Nothing would grow on them. It was very strange, but after a certain point, a lot of scholars and a lot of people in the area were kind of just like, well, and this is happening all over Theatrum, by the way. It's not just in one area. A lot of people were, like the scholars, the mages, the people out actually on these sites were kind of like, you know what? We can't really do anything about this. It's gonna either stop or it won't, and it wasn't causing enough an issue to really affect people greatly. But then this group of people called the Cult of Aharaza, no, they don't call themselves a cult, but they are a cult, began to cultivate these dead lands, and no one really questioned it. They're like, well, their loss, good luck. But after about 12 moon cycles, when these cult members would go to these sites, these regions would begin to change. Large trees would suddenly grow, and it would be like after a month, all of a sudden you would have a full-grown tree where there was nothing beforehand. You would see large mushrooms towering even over the largest of giants begin to, again, just grow. Strange creatures began to appear, and these now blighted lands began to stretch beyond just the dead lands that they originally came from. So now you're struggling with the idea of now it's starting to get into the parts of Theatrum that are actually healthy and thriving, and it's taking them over. So that was just a bit about the history of them and where they came from. As far as geography, they used to come from these barren landscapes, so whatever was there beforehand, if it was just flat land, they took it over. If it was mountains, it really just didn't matter. Where there was a dead zone, these blighted plains would just show up. And after a while, the Cult of Aharaza would kind of back off and just let it start to thrive on its own. Trying to scroll here to see if there's any other cool things that I came up with here.
What are you talking about? You have the.
I know. I'm
so
trying to like pick.
Much.
I know. I'm trying to pick a point that way I don't just read off exactly what I have on here. Like I said, these ecosystems are completely foreign to Theatrum. No one has ever seen anything like this before. I was able to go into it a little bit underneath the flora and fauna and just talking about how anything grown here that pops up has an essence of this bioluminescent feel to it. So at nighttime it will glow in the dark, and to those that look close enough or can get close enough to see, it's almost like it's breathing. You can see it kind of like, you know, tensing up and getting just a faint bit brighter and then dying down. And it's not just like they're doing it at different times, it's the entire biome or that entire area, this entire plain is just quietly
breathing at the same time?
Yeah. So, some of the flora and fauna that I've got...
I didn't know about that.
Some of the flora that I was able to go into, you've got trees that are far wider than they are tall. You've got gigantic mushrooms that kind of overtake a lot of the trees anyway. I wrote in here, trees that should have taken centuries to grow to their size grow within 5 years. Some trees have their bark that is like scales, like lizard scales on them, and some of them are completely smooth. You've got different types of animals that seem to be...
The bark is like lizards, like reptilian scales?
Mm-hmm. It's sharp and it's weird. It's very unnatural. And then you've got the trunks that are completely smooth, like smooth as polished stone, like very strange. You have animals that kind of got overtaken by this blighted area. You've got deer with horns that are so large and so vast that they really shouldn't even be able to lift themselves or lift their heads at all, but they can. And they're just walking around in the forest, and it makes no sense. Let's see. On here they had an option called natural resources for your other, if you were writing other geographical locations, what you could write. For these blighted plains, you're mostly looking at poisons. Because anything that you eat, like I said in my conditions video, anything that you eat in here, you will become blighted and you will die. So,
unless you don't.
Unless you don't,
in
and then
which
you're
case
stuck.
you're it's much worse.
Yes, then you're just stuck there. And
Death
you
is
can't
a
leave.
mercy.
Right.
Oh gosh.
Yes, so it is this horrifying alien type area. I really drew inspiration as far as the bioluminescent nighttime part of it from Pandora from Avatar. So think that, but less where that has a lot of beauty and a lot of majesty and like awe to it. Turn that and make it more, see it more as a sickness on the earth and just this dark, like something is wrong. I think I mentioned on here that walking through one of these blighted plains, the stench of mold mixes with the foggy air. It just, something is wrong. The air is thick, there's no wind, it just feels, you walk into these areas and it is almost like you walk onto a different planet. And nobody knows where they're coming from. No one really knows, other than
the cult of
Aharazah. No one really knows where this is coming from, and whenever asked about it, this cult is just like, we're just doing our God's work. We plant these seeds and this is what we're told. And they disappear and they're gone. Once they've worked and cultivated the land just enough to get it started, they leave and they go find another patch of earth to do the same thing to.
Do you have any like bizarre flora or fauna that in mind? You already kind of talked about the deer, but is there any that like stick out to you otherwise that you really enjoy the idea of, whether or not you wrote them down or just had them in your mind?
There was this, I kind of had this idea, I mentioned it very briefly, but the idea of that tree that is a lot larger all the way, like the width of it is a lot larger than the height. And it is a tree, it's got that very large trunk, but it is kind of short and stout. The branches on it are very, very short, and they kind of loop over on the side of the trunk, and they've got these little glowing orbs on the end of them. At nighttime, however, all of these glowing orbs on these short branches stand up, and they all glow. It's like they're reaching towards the sky, and then at nighttime they kind of fall back down.
During the day they fall.
Sorry. During the day they fall back down.
Right.
And it's not supposed to be like describing that. In my head, it's a very it's not a pretty thing. It's supposed to be very alien, very uncomfortable to kind of watch this whole tree as night begins to start slowly begin to stand almost.
Mm-hmm.
And these glowing orbs are just kind of standing upright like a ton of eyes on the top of this tree, and then they slowly fall back down when it becomes daytime. I really like the idea of all the giant mushrooms around. I think that would be really cool, but whereas I think the giant mushrooms on Pandora, yeah, they've got kind of like this pink, magenta, beautiful look to them. They would be more of like a dull, glowing orange or dull green, where it's just something's sick and something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those are the Blighted Plains. That's kind of the idea of this like sickness that has begun to take place on Theatrum, and what people don't really know what to do about it, because you cut down one tree, another one exactly that size is going to come back within the next 3 years. You know, they've tried to...
They don't know how to cull it.
They don't know how to... Yeah, they don't know how to. They've tried to burn part of it. I don't know if mushrooms burn per se.
It takes a lot.
It takes a lot.
It takes
and
a
at
lot.
that point, you're getting all of that weird chemical fogginess into the air that carries and can potentially carry and fall into another part of Theatrum and grow that area sickened. So it's kind of one of those, like, they're stuck. They don't know what to do.
Maybe they should ask the gods.
Maybe they should ask the gods and figure out what's going on there. But, or ask the cult if you can find them. But, yeah, those are the Blighted Plains of Theatrum.
Nice. You've talked to me when you introduced Theatrum to me, the Blighted Plains were one of the big things that you talked about. So I'm really happy that you got this chance to like elaborate
flesh
a
it
little bit,
out,
flesh
and
it out a little bit more.
Get it more on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm really excited to keep fleshing this out and keep working more in it. And yeah. Well, I'm gonna take a break from getting super excited about that. What did you write about?
So, it's kind of funny that you wrote about blighted plains, or a blighted area, a sickened area.
Mm-hmm.
I did the same thing. I don't know if that's because your and I's minds work kind of similarly when it comes to this, but whatever. So, what I wrote about is that there is a territory in Ellecrid on the continent Omith, which is the largest continent on the planet, called the Aentari Wilds. And the Aentari Wilds are notorious because they only just became known as the Aentari Wilds, like within the past 600 years.
And that's young for your world.
That's relatively young
really
for Ellecrid. But they used to be called the Green Wilds. And back in the day, the Green Wilds were kind of home to the Fae. They stretched all the way across Omith from sea to shining sea. And breached into the northern country and territories of Draconia, the principalities of Draconia, and then started to encroach south. It was at one time home to the Miranese, the people of Miradan, who were basically elves who came over from the Imperium, started a colony, and started to commune with the Fae, and kind of became elevated with being... having communed with the Fae and being more in touch with their Fae ancestry. So they are the, I gave them another name, but I'm not going to be able to find it in here. It's like, I think in Dungeons, in D&D standards, they would be referred to as Eladrin.
Okay.
But I do believe I have them something similar. I think they're the Aladrain or something like that. But it's just basically to associate them more closely with the Fae than moving away from being just elves. However, why are they called the Aentari Wilds, Arden? I will tell you, audience. Because 800 years ago, there was this big issue with the ruling body of dragonkind. It was disbanded in a bloody coup, the way that most governments go down, at least in fantasy settings. And so, when in all of this turmoil, in the midst of all of this craziness, Aentari the Sick, the ancient black dragon who was a member of this ruling council of dragons, came and decided that he was going to dwell within the Green Wilds.
He's just, I'm gonna take this.
This is mine now, is what he said. And when he said that and landed in the Aentari Wilds, his essence, his being as an ancient black dragon, just started to permeate through the Green Wilds. Because it is a wild, that is home to the Fae, grown by the Fae. As you get deeper and deeper into the woods, you start to see more of those fantastical, like, manipulations of, like, what would be considered the natural order of, like, trees don't just stand straight up, they kind of twist. Yeah, so they are more susceptible to the natural magics of the world, and a dragon in Ellecrid is a living being of natural magic and essence. So obviously, an ancient black dragon just sitting down and going, "This is mine now," is going to dilute and pollute those natural magics, and it became known as the Aentari Wilds, as the Green Wild became sickened. To the point where the Aladrain, if that's not their name, that's their name now. For this context, the Aladrain had to utterly abandon all of their homes and cities, whatever settlements they had within the Green Wilds, and basically retreat as far west as they could before, as Antari's influence and sickness spread. Obviously, the farther away from him it gets, the lighter it becomes, and the slower it becomes. So, like, they were able to, and he doesn't move around a lot, which is one of the things that really throws people off. Is like, yes, he is an ancient black dragon, but he's literally just brooding there.
Just
it's not him that they necessarily have to worry about, though he is a threat. They have to worry about the rest of his people that came with him, and the rest of the black dragons that are just kind of running around now in this sickened, tainted Feywilds, essentially, going, "Yeah, this is mine now."
Yep.
Exerting their dominance through malicious and inhospitality, shall we refer to it as. Geography, when I talked about the Aentari Wilds, it's a wide expanse of land. Like, it was from sea to shining sea. So, like, in the midst of that, you've got your highlands, your lowlands. There are rivers in some areas closer to where Aentari is believed to be residing. The rivers run so close together and so deep that it's almost swamp-like. Which leads to his, like, yeah, I'm gonna brood here. I like this. This is great for me. Yeah, exactly. Whereas there are still mountains, there are rolling hills that branch out from the mountains, but all of it is more or less contained in this dense forest. Where as you get deeper and deeper, the forest begins to change and manipulate and to resemble more of those sickened. I would say it more or less resembles unseelie, for those of you familiar with the difference between seelie and unseelie fae. Basically the good fae and the not great fae. But even the fae don't hang out here. They don't want anything to do with this, because they're like, I don't know how to deal with this.
Right.
It sickens them, so they themselves had to leave. So any of the dryads or the nymphs of that area that had, like, danced in ages past in the Green Wilds have left or been killed because they can't leave because of the sickness and influence of Aentari. But this whole thing is talking about the flora and the fauna, and I have a massive block of text about that. I'll pick out a few things that I really enjoyed. Basically, a lot of the forest folk that lived here If they manage to survive, they have adapted to become more feral. I'm thinking like squirrels and rabbits and chipmunks that were running around in here are now carnivorous.
Oh no.
With like darker fur. They're starting to adapt more to this more hostile environment that they're living in. So there are rabbits who have horns. There are chipmunks.
That's kind of cute, though.
Yeah, they're a little cute. You know, most people, players that I've had who have like walked through the Aentari Wilds, like, oh, I want one. I was like, it's poisonous. Like, I don't know what you want. But that's the other thing, because they've had to drink these poisoned waters for so long, they have become, in a gaming perspective, they are more or less resistant to poisons, and they themselves can secrete poison in some way, shape, or form, or this toxic environment. There are vines of strange flowers that kind of have, I wouldn't say a bioluminescence to them, but definitely trap light and create their own sort of light as and their own canopy, because they are creating their own canopy amidst this woods. So like they're creating their own ecosystem on top of this already existing Feywilds like ecosystem. Yeah. So they're like almost a symbiotic relationship between the two of them, and nobody has really been able to prove that it is parasitic or otherwise. It's just a shifting where the two of them are clearly living together, but what is more ever present is the sickened, is the more hostile, poisonous stuff. Also, you had mentioned, and I love that you put in this detail, you mentioned that walking through the Blighted Plains, there is this ever-present smell of like mold in the air. Yeah, so contrasting that, the Aentari Wilds, when you get deep into the woods, it smells very sweet. That is leading off of the fact that a number of the flowers and flora that have popped up and sprung up have now this sweet aroma that is exuding from them, because they are venomous, they are poisonous, and because they want to lure prey. Right. So everything kind of has this unnerving sweetness to it, at least in smell. Do you want to eat anything? Not exactly. You probably don't want to drink the water without filtering it in some way, shape, or form. There's definitely some larger beasts that live there that, again, have adapted in some way, shape, or form. Anything that remains in the Aentari Wilds in this short 800-year time span have adapted in some way, shape, or form. So, again, the bunnies with the horns, I think your allusion to the deer with, like, heavy antlers is probably similar to this. But I loved also how, in order to deal with the now multitude of predators that they would have to deal with, not just like the normal wolves or bears necessarily that you would find in the woods. Now you've got dragons and everything that is being sickened by their influence. Even the little bunny friend that you had, 2 generations ago are not your friends anymore. So like the deers have multiple eyes. Ooh. Just to like, I need to see everything at all times. Yeah. I would say the rabbits have I wouldn't say go so far as to say scorpion tails, but they definitely have like manticore-like stingers. Yes. And especially the chipmunks, those two. So like little things that are just evolution is taking a very strange turn in the Aentari Wilds. But that's where the bizarre flora and fauna got. I also wanted to throw in that there's like Venus flytrap level plants in there. Yeah. But I didn't want to like expressly just say Venus flytrap, so more or less plants that, again, secrete that sort of sweet, sticky sap that would attract prey to them to, like, drink out of or eat out of, and then they just eat them. I'm getting a really disgusting image of, like, a plant whose petals come together almost like a spout, a spigot in a sense, and, like, some lonely deer coming in, oh yes, I'm going to stick my face in here and lick this, and then all of a sudden just getting eaten by this plant. That's horrifying to think about.
I like it.
And then I go deep into the history and talk a lot about the history. The flora and fauna I definitely went hard in the paint on. And then the other one was the natural resources. Kind of the same way with you. The Aentari Wilds is now a hot spot for people to get to cultivate poisons.
Right.
And you take those flowers, you groom them or whatever, and you go through whatever process, and you get these, nice new poisons. Aside from that, the one thing that I wanted to talk about in their natural resources, at least here on the document, was the fact that because of the influence of Aentari and the presence of his clan, people can't go out into the Feywilds to get there's the Feywood trees that have naturally magically infused branches that are good for magical bows or what have you. Basically these are perfect for druids. They can't get them anymore, or they don't want to venture in to get them because you've got poisonous chipmunks with manticore stingers on them, or the clans of centaurs that live in the Aentari Wilds and have just become more violent and more we will run you down in the woods, sort of, headless horseman style.
Right. What I really liked about yours is going into the idea of taking this already existing, ecosystem and how it had to change over these, 600 years, 800 years.
600 to 800 years,
like the having to grow darker fur or having to have these other evolutionary new traits just to survive. I really like that you went into that. Because with mine, it was more so just this is all alien and anything goes in here. With you, it was more changing these different creatures. I really like the bunnies with the horns. I think they're cute and they're dangerous, and that's right up my alley. So
I'm also thinking that you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell, but some of the forest folk would be able to see in the dark where normally they wouldn't have that sort of a dark vision, or maybe just maybe the rabbit has a second eyelid.
Ooh.
Second pair of eyelids.
I don't like that.
Like a reptile.
Never mind, it's not looking cute.
They're still cute.
They can be. They can be. But yeah, I really like that idea. I've known a little bit about Aentari, but knowing the full history of him just sitting there and it's spreading, it's got that sickening ew.
For you, there's the mystique of what is this cult doing? Why are they doing this? For me, I would say the mystique is what is more or less from the people's perspective. People want to know is what was Antari's gain from this? Why would he do this to sicken the wood? And Aentari is just sitting there.
It's just it's my home.
I just wanted a place
a swamp
to hang my hat.
Yep. But yeah, that's all I got.
That is all I got. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let us know in the comments below something that you enjoyed about today's video, or if you have an idea that you're willing to share.
If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to hit all those buttons that everyone else bugs you about. We'd love for you to join our lunch table.
And go check out World Anvil if you're interested.
You guys have been great. I'm Kat.
I'm Arden13. I'm still waiting on that ramen.
We'll see you next time. Bye!